Hello, this is Marlene, and I am going to continue with my birth story. This is the fourth video. And before I continue, or going to the giving birth, going into labor, I forgot to mention something that we did during the preparation to give birth during that pregnancy, which is once that we were communicating and I had already established that I would have this natural birth, we got supported through what we call círculos de embarazo or pregnancy circles. Already had their kids, their children, in that natural birth in a birth center or at home with our same midwives and other parents as us that were also like first time parents or first time deciding to have this kind of birth. And that was very cool and extremely supportive because through listening and being there with the new moms bringing their children, their recently born children, that was really encouraging, and it gave me a lot of confidence to hear from their own story how it developed, how it happened. And we got to go to two of them because they would take place on a monthly basis. So the two moms that we got to meet, the two couples, were cases where the birthing process, the going into labor, was really fast. So both were stories of probably 12 hours or so. And I have to say that both of them are, in fact, very young women. So by young, I mean 10 years younger than I am 34 at the moment. And I was still 34 when I gave birth. So they are like, they were 24, 20, probably even less than that, the other one. And both of their birthing process was like really quick, and they barely got to get to the birthing center. And the baby was like already popping out. So I was like, wow, that sounds really great. And I'm glad that I heard those stories to, be encouraged to consider that, it might be a short process. And not only that, but it also allowed me to see the kind of bonding, the relationship that formed between the midwives and the women, and in essence, a couple, and how grateful they were for their support, that environment that is created with them, essentially, whether at home or at their birth center as well. And that was very, very supportive. We would also do some kind of like guided meditations, and a lot of information was given on breastfeeding, and after you give birth, what are the steps, what happens with your um, recovery process and getting onto breastfeeding and so forth. We also attended on the side another breastfeeding conference from a very well-known breastfeeding coach, so to speak, here in my city. And there we also were along with like 11 couples. So that was also very cool, like being in a room filled with, other couples and pregnant in different stages, and learning about the marvelous stuff, the marvelous facts about breastfeeding and the importance of it. And this is something that I also wanted to point out, that when I was getting ready to give birth and in those pregnancy months, I paid too much attention on the birthing process, like really mentalizing myself of, getting ready to that moment of giving birth, that I didn't pay as much attention to, oh, what happens once that you deliver and, breastfeeding and going directly into it. I did, listen to a few things here and there, but I was completely immersed into the what happens in a home birth, what happens in the hospital, and that sort of thing. So I will discuss more of the afterbirth in another one, not to go too far into that for now. But let's go into the nitty gritty details of the going into labor. So I was on the week 37. This was January 11th, 2000 no, 2020 actually already. So that day was like anything can happen from here on. That was actually the day that my father's 70th birthday was taking place, like the celebration. So I was still just there and telling everyone, like, yeah, yeah, from here on, anything can happen. I wanted to be very vague about the possibility of when I would be giving birth according to my idea and my desire, preferred date even. And I'll explain why. And I was like, oh no, it's gonna take long, but anything can happen. Oh, you let us know so that we can go to the hospital and visit you. Of course, as I mentioned in my previous video, I didn't want to tell anyone that it wasn't going to be in a hospital, to not put people into that fear and expecting the worst happening from a home birth and that sort of thing. So I was like, yeah, yeah, we'll let you know, everything will be fine. But in my mind, I kept pushing the fact that, yes, now anything can happen and the baby can be born from here on, and nothing can stop that. But in my mind, I thought, no, it looks like I will have her around the end of January, maybe even possibly at the beginning of February. So there's time. Well, it happens that on the 14th, um, which was the next, the 11th was my mark of the 37th week, right? So a few days later, on the 14th, it was my actual father's birthday, and we were here at his house and celebrating and so forth. And I already started feeling some contractions. The contractions started, what is called probably the Braxton Hicks contractions, happened or started on January 1st, 2020. Like that's the day when I started feeling like, okay, this feels a bit odd, and it gets very stiff, and there's like some cramping happening. And they continue to happen every once in a while. So I didn't pay much attention because I had read that, those can start many weeks before you actually are due. So I let it be, didn't pay much attention. And on the 14th, I started feeling those more, with more frequency. And that's something that I also didn't pay much attention. I thought that they were still the Braxton Hicks contractions, and I was like, oh, this is how it feels. Okay, but I was in that mindset of I still have stuff to do, I still have stuff to get for the home birth, I have still to buy this and that, which are items that you need to have at home for that birthing process, like some t-shirts and some towels and stuff like that. Sorry for the noise in the street. There are vendors that go through it. I hope that it doesn't create too much noise. And so I was in that mentality, and I was like, oh, I'm going to still go to my yoga class and go to swim. And that Tuesday, the 14th, um, I was here with my mother, and I was telling her, I'm feeling already like some contractions. But I think that there's still the Braxton Hicks. And she was like, okay, let me feel. And she felt, and she was like, wait a moment, this is getting very, very stiff already. How long have you been having this kind of contractions? And I was like, oh, it's been like a few days. I was so like nonchalantly like, ah, yeah, nothing's going on. And she was like, this might be already part of your going into labor. And I was like, nah, 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 everything is fine. We went to our house, and in the middle of the night, which means right on the at 12 a.m. on the 15th of January, I go to pee and the mucus plug comes out. And I had already read how that goes, and immediately in my mind once again it's like, oh, I've read that ladies that have their mucus plug out, they can last even 2 weeks without it and everything will be fine. So I kept postponing the due date, right? I was like, it's nothing to worry, I will still be carrying my baby and doing my life as usual. And I will be due like around the 27th or something. So I let it be. I told my partner, like, okay, it's out, nothing to worry about. I didn't freak out because I already knew that it's part of the process. I went to sleep. And that whole night, I was so tired. I was, sleeping, but I kept feeling what in my dreams felt like lightning within me the whole night. But I didn't wake up. I didn't want to wake up because I was like resting really well. It's almost, now that I recall it, it's almost as if my body knew, like, this is the last night of really good rest, perhaps, that you will have in the following 4 days or something. So I was sleeping and kept feeling like those contractions very frequently, actually. And they felt like lightning, according to me, in my dreams. Well, there was a moment where I said, this isn't feeling like your regular every now and then contraction. I need to wake up my partner. So I did. It was around 4 a.m. or something. And then I started saying, I feel contractions and they're coming very strong and very frequently. And he was like, oh my God, because we had, when how you see and you watch all of those videos of get your suitcase prepared and get everything ready, blah, blah, blah. I hadn't done anything of that because in my mind, I was projecting the due date to 2 weeks further down the lane, right? And the birthing wasn't going to take place there, but in my parents' house, which is where I'm currently recording this. So at 4 a.m., as I start feeling that, I'm like, should I call Minerva already? And should I already tell my parents that we're going there because this is baby's coming now? And I was like, no, 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 I'll wait until they have some rest. And, I'm usually very considerate, like, no, 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 let's have them, have their sleep for some time and let's first pack our bags. So, I was already feeling, and these are contractions quite, strong, not the strongest like as in active labor, but quite frequently. They were like 10 minutes apart from each other and sometimes even less. So I had also watched a lot of videos and read how once that you have that frequency, it's like you're going into labor now. And based on the stories of these ladies that I had met in that pregnancy circle reunion, I was like, oh my God, it's happening today. So at 5 a.m., I decided to call Minerva, our midwife, and tell her what was going on. And she was like, wow, yeah, they're frequent. Okay, so you let us know when you want us to go there already to your house. And, I called my father so that he could come and pick us up with all the stuff that we were taking to move here for that time and for the birthing process. And already on the way here, I was like, oh my God, in every single bump on the road, it was like, oh my God, it's coming out or something. The frequency of the contractions was um, pretty much like, every 7 minutes, every 10 minutes. And I was like, at the same time in my mind, but no, it cannot be already this soon. I'm not prepared. I'm not ready. I have still stuff to do. I have work to do. I haven't delegated everything that I had considered I would be delegating yet. So that was Wednesday, early morning when we got here, and then they vanished. They stopped. I would get these contractions every 45 minutes, every hour, and so forth. So I called our midwives and said, they're gone. It's not happening with that frequency. And, they come every hour or every 45 minutes. I kept tracking the contractions from the first ones that I started now, like fully aware, recognizing this is the real deal now at 4 a.m. And yeah, you could see the cycles had opened up a lot in between one another. So that Wednesday, I still did my stuff. Like I had chats to do with people, and I was still at them, and I was sitting on my ball, and I was like, okay, yeah, contraction comes, okay, okay, I was able to still laugh and eat, and they were very bearable. And it was even funny for my parents to be seeing me. I was taking breakfast, and I was like, okay, coming. So it was what is called a passive labor process, right? And that was something that lasted for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and until Saturday, 5 a.m., that I really went into active labor. So what happened during these days? The midwives did come to our house to do some checkups, and there were several things that they did to support with activating the labor. And I will explain them because I find this an essential part of why I value so much this natural birthing process, assisted by people that have the knowledge and the awareness of how to do things, with their expertise with multiple women and multiple cases. Um, so, what went on during Wednesday, I think that they did come that day and they checked, and it's like, okay, baby's fine. How are you feeling? And they did some, um, it's called reboseo. It's like moving your belly with some cloth. I don't know what the name is, like a wrap or something. It's ancient techniques used to get the woman's body like warm, so to speak, and to accommodate the baby and to get it going down and so forth. So that's something that they did to me. The next day on Thursday, before I go to Thursday, on the night of Wednesday to Thursday, this means the second night of feeling contractions, because probably you watching this going into labor, or you having experiences, you probably know that things act up. The process gets active during the night. So at night is when I would have the worst contractions, and I would be essentially up all night, more or less, with constant contractions. So that happened from Wednesday to Thursday. I went to bed and everything was fine, and I kept having this every now and then contractions. And then those 3 nights, those 2 nights, following 2 nights, I kept having contractions every 20 minutes. I kept tracking them all. I mean, I have a list of 300 and something contractions up until when I lost my awareness of time and space, which I will also tell about. But that is what happened, and that means that we would, because my partner was there every single moment and every single contraction. We were laying on bed, we would sleep, and then I would just wake him up, like, again, another one, and he would grab me, and we would like get up from the bed and stand on the diaper change area that we had here established for Minerva, and he would help me, like hold my hand and breathe through the contractions, because they were getting strong and strong every single night. And that's how we slept, right? Because that's how it went. My birthing process took very long. It was half baked, halfway, and I will explain what are the possible causes for it. Now, here is very pertinent to explain how, if I had gone to my regular doctor hospital on Wednesday at 5 a.m. with that kind of contractions and then stopping, they probably wouldn't have had the patience to be there with me the next 4 days until I gave birth and opened up naturally to do so. They would have probably induced me. And I will explain why I have this kind of perception. But this is to say that I kept being reassured by my midwives that, this is how it goes and every woman's different, because I was already like, am I going to stay like this for a week or more, or what's going to happen? I still have stuff to do. Am I going to get out of this half-baked labor process or not? So in my mind, I wasn't ready to give birth. I wasn't focusing on, I am giving birth. This is it. Baby's coming out now. I had essentially like resistance to it. And this is something that I only knew of because of an, let's say, a psychological survey that took place on Friday. So before I go to Friday, on Thursday, same process. I wake up and everything is okay. I kept having the contractions every 40 minutes, maybe half an hour, sometimes more, sometimes less. It kept being active. But those were, breathable, they were bearable type of contractions. So I was once again ringing my midwives and I was like, it's still not happening. It's still not opening up. So Thursday, they once again came and they did some acupuncture um, to kind of open me up, warm me up. Of course, it was winter. They did say that, it can happen that the body is too cold and so forth. So they did that and they gave me some homeopathy as well. I don't know the specifics of it because that's their thing, but they kept me, like saying, okay, you don't worry, this is how it is. Sometimes it lasts days, so be patient. Focus on you giving birth and focus on this happening. So I was like, yeah, yeah, sure. I tend to be very intellectual, and the birthing process really showed me that. I'll explain why. So night comes from Thursday to Friday, same story. Didn't sleep because we were waking up every 20 minutes with contractions. And so it's like you sleep some, I don't know how long we would sleep. I was already like in another zone because not having slept properly 2 prior nights already. The third night, it was already like, okay, let's do this, and waking up every 20 minutes. And that's how it went. I don't know why it activates at night. Some say that, the moon and whatever. So to not make the whole story longer, on Friday I called midwives and they were like, okay, we're coming there and we will see what we can do to go into the active phase, because now you really have to go through it. The water had broken partially. I did see like some liquid coming out, so I was wearing some kind of pad for that, and but not much was coming out. It wasn't like a full, you know. So I told them, I have this liquid coming out, and they were like, it's partially broken but not fully. So that's when they took their third tool out of their bag, which is that psychological support or survey. And we were sitting all together, my partner next to me, and Minerva, our midwife, was like making questions, and Maria Luisa as well. And they were really direct, like, are you ready to give birth? And I was like, yes, I was like, yes, I'm up for it. um and when she asked, um do you consider that you fear going into labor? And I was like, no, no, everything is fine. And she was like, okay, um do you have everything ready to be a mother, to be a parent? And I was like, oh no, not yet, because I haven't delegated this and that at work, and we didn't get to buy this and that stuff for giving birth, and la 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 la. And that's when my partner was like, hold on, she says that she's ready and whatnot, but no, she isn't focusing at all on giving birth. She's still doing her life. She's still attending to her responsibilities. She's not focusing at all into the thing that is here right now, giving birth. And I was like, yeah, that's true. That's how things are. So we all laughed together because he's just like that. He won't take shit essentially, and he will always point out if I am deluding myself somehow. So I was like playing this, oh yeah, sure, I'm fine, I'm ready, oh yeah, So I only had this doubt coming in, like, do you have everything ready? And that's when the connection was made that I wasn't really wanting to let go of being pregnant. And that's when I opened up. I was cross-legged sitting on my yoga mat and and then I started opening up and I was like, well, yeah, I wanted this to happen at the end of the month, and I wanted to have everything ready and to say goodbye to my pregnant activities, because as I explained, I had the blast being pregnant and active and going here and there and feeling wonderful, and carrying my baby everywhere with me just like this, and don't not having to care for her, right? So I was like, this is awesome. I don't want to give this up. Why would I give it up? So that's when I realized, oh my god, I am holding back this whole process because I don't want to actually let go of her. I don't want her out of me. I don't want her to be now another being and independent. I want her to continue being here with me, in my womb, all safe and protected, like forever pregnant. So when I said those words, it was so magical, if you could say so. My water broke in that single moment, and I get tingling sensations when I explain that, because he was like, that was it, just with a few questions and that self-honest assessment that I hadn't been making because I was too busy planning and still working and still pretending like I'm still active, not really focusing on I am delivering my baby. This is happening right now. I wasn't still in that mindset, even though I thought I was. In reality, I wasn't. So when the water broke, I started feeling like everything humid in my pants, and I'm like, oh my god, my water broke already, and I started crying, and I was like, this is it. I wasn't letting go of her. I didn't want to let go of her, and I have to. I completely have to. I have to let go of pregnancy, and that's what I then was talking to them. Like, I got so comfortable with pregnancy, with having her with me all the time, and my life as a pregnant woman, and everything that came with that. And I never could have imagined that I was holding on to being pregnant, and that I had enjoyed it so much, and that I didn't want to, of course, now take the responsibility of becoming a mother and everything that would unfold. So it was a comfort zone. Pregnancy became a comfort zone, and I didn't want it to end. So I had to go through that mourning process, actually, of you're letting go of your pregnancy now. It's not the sweetness of waiting for the baby, but now the real deal is here. So that happened at 2 p.m., 2 something p.m. on Friday, and I was very grateful because they were there with us and in a very special moment. And I was like, this is it, the water broke. And Minerva said, now you're going into active labor. I'm most certain you will. And so rest well this whole afternoon. It will probably get active during the night. Call us once that you're ready. And that was it. In fact, we went to sleep again, quote unquote sleep, on Friday night. the same happened. The intensity of the contractions obviously went up. um, I do consider that they were as frequent as 20 minutes and a little bit less, like every 10 minutes or so. Of course, it was like madness because we were already like from Wednesday to Thursday to Friday, three, almost 4 nights of not really sleeping well. And that was the last night before we had our baby. Um, but we managed to at 5 a.m. or something. I was like, okay, this is it. This feels really, really strong now. I want Minerva and Maria Luisa, our midwives, to come. So we called them and they arrived quite fast, actually. Um, and that Saturday, which was now the 18th of January, is when the active labor phase started. So memories of what happened that day are very vague because, as some of you women that have given birth naturally and without sedatives and without drugs involved, you probably know that you do go into certain out of your mind state, like fully physically, and time disappears and everything just becomes like one big blur of constant contractions, yes, constant pain, and finding just positions in which to manage the whole process. And in this whole time, my partner was there with me every single moment. You could have seen him in probably some photos. He was really, really thin because we hadn't slept properly, he hadn't eaten properly either, and it was very demanding as well for him, but he was there with me the whole time, and I am absolutely grateful for that. And that gave me always like that comfort, that trust. He was my pillar throughout the whole time. And in that Saturday, I managed to go through the contractions, and what went on in my mind and my body was like, this is it. And it's not that I feared really giving birth, I had really settled that down. um, but it was more of what made it so long, I would say, is that I lacked that connection within my physical body, like to really know how to push and how to move my insides. And that's when I realized that, I think I've got it all said and done and studied. I think I know, I have an idea of what I'm doing, but I really didn't, of course. And the midwife support here was more of an accompanying process. If I wanted them and if I required them, and wanted to hold two people's hands and do some kind of strength and that sort of thing, they were there with me. My partner was there with me. And sometimes when he had to go and pee or eat something quick, then I would stay with two midwives, and they would support me. But what can I say? I was howling like a mad lady the whole day because I gave birth until 6 p.m., 6:35 p.m. that day. So it was a whole day of active labor, around 12 hours then now of the real deal, the active labor, the really painful contractions. And the support that I had was homeopathy, acupuncture, massaging. Once again, the reboceo, the wrap, the cloth that is placed underneath your belly to move the baby, and squatting in some special chairs for birth delivery. And then we had the pool, the birthing pool, already set and everything. And you cannot go into the pool until you are certain you have certain dilation, right? Otherwise, they say that the birthing process stops or recede. So that's when I don't know, hours passed really of intense pain and whatever. I ate some chicken broth that my aunt sent me, and I would eat a lot of seeds and I think chocolate, and I also drank chocolate with a lot of cinnamon to activate the whole thing. Also teas, I was supported with teas, um, with certain herbs that they use also to get things going with the labor. I did have two tacts, which is a very, very uncomfortable process of your midwife, getting your hand in your vagina essentially to measure the amount of fingers or centimeters that you are dilated. And that happened twice, if I recall well. But it was very gentle. She let me know exactly when to, like how to breathe and to allow her hand in and so forth. I've heard horrible stories happening uh, of this happening in horrible ways in hospital, and really I don't wish any of that to anyone. So just be aware of what a tact is and what it does, and how it can feel. But the more that you're at ease and with trust in that person, like in my case our midwife, then it wasn't as bad. And at some point she was like, you're already like 8 centimeters, and it's you can go into the water. And I was already in so much pain, I could not believe myself. I was so tired from sleepless nights for already 4 days, and um, I knew that this was going to be like going up a hill, doing a marathon or something, but I never imagined it would take that long. So I don't know the time this was, but I did go through various phases where certain psychological fears emerged, which I've had previously as conditions that are probably programmed in me. I did try to work through them beforehand, before the birthing process, which have to do with feeling um, like I cannot breathe, like lacking air, like I'm lacking air. So there was one moment where I was like, I'm lacking air. This was before going into the water. Like, I'm lacking air and I need to breathe and so forth. And I feel like I'm going to, um, what's the word? When you lose consciousness and you fall, that kind of experience emerged. And that's when my mother got very scared, because she had seen that kind of situation happening to her. It's like a loss of electrolytes, and you can go into, just vanishing and losing consciousness and whatever. I don't have the word at the moment, but, anyways. So that's when she went into fear. And one thing that I was very conflictive about her being in the whole birthing process, it was precisely that she was bringing fear into the whole ambience and the whole environment of giving birth. And when that happened, I just lost it. In that moment, you cannot really be like, oh, I'm going to be very aware of my emotions. And I was like, just get lost. I said it in other words. I wasn't really, kind to her, because I was like, go away. I don't want to see you here, because you're not bringing trust into the whole process. And that's when also our midwives, one of them went with her and, went to get some tea and look at flowers or whatever to be at ease. And me, I had to continue with my whole process. And I got aided by homeopathy once again. They gave me a ton of things. I have no idea. None of it, of course, medical in terms of like allopathic medicine. None of that. No sedative, no nothing. And this is something that you will also know if you're planning to go into a water birth. You cannot be given epidurals. You cannot be given any oxytocin to speed up anything, because that goes against the whole natural process, and it's even harmful, actually. Thanks, Anton, for the congratulations. So once that I went into, well, the pool had to be filled with water. The hot water wasn't functioning, so it was a whole mess to get the warm water into the pool. And I was in the middle of, kind of worrying about that situation. So this might be a nice tip, if you can find some kind of electric way to heat the water in some plastic tanks or something, for if you're boiler breaks or something, that's something handy to consider when giving birth at home. But anyways, my parents did their best to manage to get it filled, and once that I went in, it was heaven. I had never, felt so blessed by the experience of water. Water is a natural sedative. Water enabled me to give birth and not have any rupture in my tissues in the around the vagina, etc. And it was like the best sedative ever. And I was like, I'm so grateful that I could be in the water. And everything is very vague when it comes to memories. I don't know how long I was in the birthing whole process, but I do know that it was very, very long, and it was very climatic, so to speak, because there was a moment where I just, my body was so tired. I drank like electrolytes like crazy. I ate a lot of like carbs and everything, but I was so tired. I couldn't believe how tired I was. And they kept telling me, like, feel, like, put your fingers down there and feel the head of your baby. She's there. She's already there. You really just have to push a little bit more, and she's there, she's coming out. And I was like, oh my god, it was really, really, it was stressful, it was painful as hell. Yes, of course, I won't lie, it is. I was in another realm and so forth. There was a moment when also the whole process stopped, like went into a halt. I wasn't feeling contractions that often, and that's when my midwives were kind of like, oh my god. But because there is that point in water birth where you get so relaxed, the body gets so relaxed that the whole birthing process stops. And that's not something you want. So they did like some kind of re-immersion, like refocusing of me in the birthing process. And it was, yes, like a guided meditation, words and surrendering. I just remember surrendering into the process, surrendering to the body, like not trying to control the contractions, which is what I was doing very much. I was trying to control the pain. I was still in my, I am strong. I can handle this. I got this type of mindset, instead of surrendering to that very physical, brutal, primal scream of giving birth and really, like pushing down. I was still like contracting, like I was, they say that I had my legs like contracting and being very, very stiff, and I wasn't really letting go. I was doing the opposite. And it's something that I couldn't connect within myself. It is not a mind process at all. And that was the greatest, eye-opening lesson. Like, I'm not in my body at all. I have no idea of how to push my baby out. I have no clue. So that was very eye-opening. I did notice in that moment, like my midwives were a bit like, oh my god, let's hope. Perhaps they thought, let's hope we don't have to go to plan B. Plan B was the clinic, hospital situation to get the baby out. So motivated by that, my actual fear of hospitals, because it's what it is, I didn't want to go to any of that. I was like, I have to do this. It's happening here. I'm not going anywhere. I will if there's no other way and they tell me so, but it's going to happen here. And my mother then like reintegrated into the group. So in the birthing moment, it was only our two midwives, my partner and my mother. And my mother had this old method that she would teach of, how to breathe and then push and whatever. And I never wanted to learn that. But it actually became handy at the very last moment, or in the very last phase of giving birth. Um, that's when she said, you have to like inhale really, really, really deep. And then once that you exhale, push, push, push the hardest that you can. And after a few of those with all my strength, I really felt like all my organs were going down my vagina, really. It felt like I was loosening everything, not only a baby, but everything. The effort was immense. I mean, this was such a brutal process that my partner started crying at some point, and I couldn't even, look at him and do anything. I was just like, I'm okay, I'm in this. I was like in a trance. You go into a trance like state, and all that I could think of is, I need strength, I need strength, I need to gather strength to do this. So I'm really glad that I didn't connect to fear throughout the whole thing, except for when I thought that I was lacking air, which is something that I experience in my real life, um, kind of constantly at times. It's like a claustrophobic experience, and it did take place in the labor process. I was able to overcome it. But other than that, I just wanted like strength, and I was feeling so tired, sleepless nights. And in one of those pushes, in the water, I was like, okay, this is it, one last one. And I could kept feeling her head just coming out, but not completely. I don't know how long that lasted, maybe 2 3 hours of crowning. That's the word, the crowning of her. And that's when, in one of those pushing, 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 and she came out at last. And it felt like, I even say it in the little video that my mother took, like she came out like a sausage, like it felt like like when you have a really bad diarrhea and then you feel like, oh, I released everything into the toilet. That's how it felt giving birth. And I was really glad at last to see her, right? Like, oh my god, this is done. Like, yay, we made it. And I held her, and that whole process, it's also very vague. There's some videos that I have to kind of know how I did. But then that's not the end of giving labor. The next thing is a placenta. And the placenta came, I think, 20 minutes later, which wasn't that long. And it's just like another mini giving birth process. And this is something very interesting, because once that I was holding the baby, and then I said, like, oh, I think that the placenta is coming. So I don't know if someone held the baby. Probably they did. And uh, you know, the placenta came out. And then they wrapped my baby, took the placenta, placed it in a crystal container that we had prepared for that. They gave her to my mother, and I was like, wait a minute, but how are you going to give her if she's like connected to me? And I was like, oh, no, no way. She's no longer connected to me. The placenta is out. She's now an individual being. So once again, the resistance to let her go and actually be being by herself still came out in my, out of consciousness, if you want to call it that, state that I was in. Like, how are you going to give her to another if she's connected to me? Oh no, she's completely out now, right? So these are very interesting experiences coming through once that I gave birth. And the next thing was getting out of the pool, which is like a whole process, because you get so into that pressure and space and whatever, that the moment that I went out of the pool, I went out of myself. I lost consciousness, they say, for 2 seconds, but to me it felt like I died and was reborn. It really felt like I lost consciousness. And when I um, opened my eyes, and Minerva, our midwife, said, Marlene, you are here. I was like, whoa. I opened my eyes, I saw her. For a moment I didn't know who she was, and then it all came back to me, like, oh my god, it happened. I gave birth, and Minerva is here. My baby is also called Minerva, by the way. So that was like really impactful, and this has happened to many women. I don't know if it's a physical exertion, a mixture of all the stress, all the hormones, or actually like the impact of, oh my god, I became a mother, and then you faint. Faint is the word, faint. and then I fainted, right? And this happened twice. And the second time it was the same. I felt like, I was walking slowly towards the bed next door, and I fainted, and they brought me back again with their midwife trickery, as they say. And I was like, oh my God, you brought me back again. I thought I was going to die, and they were all laughing. I was like, no, seriously, I thought that I died. Maybe the old me died for sure. And that's another story. Oh my God, this is so long already, but I don't care. So the last phase of this birthing process was marvelous because it happened in the bed that's in front of me, like in this room. Um, the whole cord clamping process didn't happen right away. Of course, you have to wait a long time. I don't know how long it was, but probably an hour or so. And it was like a whole ritual between my parents were there, the midwives, my partner, and everyone dedicated some words for Minerva as a good omen to her life. And that little ceremony took place, and the cord clamping took place with an obsidian knife, which is a kind of stone. And I remember a candle being there. I mean, I'm really hazy with the memories, but I know that it was really nice. And the latching, the breastfeeding started right away. She was like a super strong lady already. It's interesting because she was also born with a lot of hair already. She didn't have the vermix, which is that waxy stuff that babies have. And I knew part of my motivation as well to do this whole natural birthing process is because I've read that once that you go through that whole labor process, then the oxytocin levels come naturally and you are able to breastfeed without a problem. And that's so. That is the fact. And that's why I was very confident as well. Like the right things, there was no medical intervention. I should be able to breastfeed without a problem. And that's how it went. And she would be like already moving her neck and going like, latching onto me. And I was like, oh my God, have this baby now drinking off me. So that was very, very fascinating. But that's also the gift of learning how things work, knowing your motivation, not only like, oh, I don't want to go to a hospital. No, knowing that the goodness, the good stuff that happens through the woman giving birth this way, that prepares the whole body, prepares the baby, to letting them know, hey, you're now going out. And all that effort as well strengthens them, allows them to have all the good bacteria, and it's like a natural vaccine. That's what I wanted to get to, vaccine. When it comes to strengthening their what is called immunologic system, which is just your terrain, your body, be prepared for life and your environment and your mother and the place that you're going to be living in, right? So that whole wonderful, painfully magical process was for the best, right? They still asked us, like, do you want to inject the vitamin K2 to your baby? No, we don't want any of that. Thank you. They have to offer it as part of their regulations, I guess. And then there was they only put colloidal silver on her eyes. Some other doctors use like allopathic medicines. So everything was natural. There was zero intervention. We didn't immediately go and weight her and measure her. No, I said we're not interested in that. We just want to be with our baby, and that's it. So that night she actually slept with my partner in his chest, skin to skin, because I was too tired to be able to, also take care of her. So I will wrap this up here saying that it was the most important job I've ever done, or performance, or whatever, feat in my life. Everyone was really happy, really proud, and I received the best accolades I've received in my life because of that. But to me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm the hero. No, it was like, this is how things should be done. What I did wasn't really something heroic. It was painful, lengthy, yes, but this is what's best. This is what I think it's the best way to give birth to another being. at home with people you love, with people you care, with people that you trust with the whole process, with zero unnecessary drugs and medical interventions, because all of that actually gets to your baby. I mean, what do you think that an epidural that contains fentanyl will do to your baby, right? I know it sucks that women have to go through that for various health reasons or whatever. It sucks, and I think that the medical process has to, get up to date. There must be other ways to assist women to give birth in conditions that do not involve drugs of that kind, or oxytocin that messes the whole breastfeeding process. And I have a lot of explanations on the benefits of birthing naturally. You can find them on YouTube. I will leave a link to a playlist that contains more of the very scientific explanation of this, which I suggest that if you are pregnant or looking to be pregnant, you can watch that information, because I find that to be very supportive and explains also why the VACCINES are not really supportive for none of this process, not while you were pregnant, not while you gave birth. This whole process changed my life completely, absolutely. And I will continue sharing how it was now that the baby was out, and the whole birthing process that I was preparing for months and months was now done. Like, now reality hit me very, very hard, and for good. um, I'm really glad to be able to share this. Also, for me to watch later on, so that's why I went into so much detail. If you got to hear and enjoyed it, hey, cool for that. If you are about to give birth, or if you're a pregnant woman and you would like some other details on my experience, or suggestions, or comments, or whatever, let me know. I'm really glad to support if I can, because once again, I was very inspired by people, again, women rather, pregnant women here on YouTube. I watched a ton of videos of you guys here in this community, and learned a lot, gave me a lot of courage to do what I'm doing, and I wanted to give this back to you, to anyone that can benefit from this. Okay, so this is it. Thanks for listening. And next week, I will probably go into the after giving birth process and how that went, because there's very important information about breastfeeding and the psychological state that one goes in, etc. Thanks for watching along, Anthony. So I bid you farewell, goodbye, and thanks for watching, and see you next time.